Hi, I'm Angela. I'm the founder of Epic Initiator Coaching, and I coach a lot around attachment, love addiction, codependence, relationships. And today I want to talk about attachment styles and gender. For most of us, we can say just common sense wise that attachment styles are going to be independent of gender. It doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter if you're cisgender or trans. It doesn't matter what your orientation is. Attachment styles are based on how you attached and whether you had a successful attachment, meaning you felt very safe and cared for, or whether there was fear in that attachment, or whether you could rely on your caretakers or you couldn't. But there are definitely some intersections when it comes to gender based on cultural norms, and then there's also some intersections when it comes to masculine and feminine energy, which could also be referenced as yin and yang energy or alpha and omega energy. It's important to note that yes, there can absolutely be anxiously attached males, there can be avoidant females, and everything in between. Disorganized people attract disorganized people, and usually because of polarity, opposites do attract, or complementary attachment tends to attract. So anxious love avoidant. Avoidant actually do like anxious, even though it seems like they don't. Now, when we're looking at people and their attachment, we need to consider the context. Where did they grow up culturally? How did their gender growing up impact how they were treated? So we have to take these things into account, along with the attachment styles of their parents, the availability of their parents. And generally, in anxious attachment, there was just not as available as the parents could be. So it was kind of hit or miss, and that can cause sort of an addictive cycle where there's waiting and then hoping that there's going to be some contact. And then when there is, it's like elation, and then it goes back to not a sense of non-certainty. And in avoidance, it not only comes from enmeshment where someone might be pushing past their boundaries too much, so they don't feel safe in proximity to other people, because of the potential for identity death, the death of their ego, because there's no line between where someone ends and they begin. But avoidant attachment can also come from neglect, where there's just no emotional modeling, and so they don't really feel safe to express emotions, and they just don't know how. And so when there are emotional things happening, they just don't quite have the skill set, and it's not familiar to their nervous system, so they can feel very overwhelmed by emotion. When it comes to gender norms or gender stereotypes, especially in Western culture, females are generally more emotionally attuned or taken care of, but again, it just depends on the availability of the parents. And so there is a stereotype that women are more needy, women are more emotional, but it's simply not the case. It just depends on the person's nervous system. It depends how they were raised. It definitely depends on how they attached. Men are just as emotional, if not more emotional than women. The way they feel is very different. How they feel is very different. Clients are pretty much split down the middle at all times, 50% men and 50% women. And what I do find around emotions is the more emotional a person is, sometimes it can seem out of place, like it's intensified emotions. Oftentimes it's a sign of more emotional neglect or emotional abuse, where that person wasn't allowed to feel their feelings, and now all of a sudden, because they're feeling it, it's amplified. And so it's just not true at all that one gender or one masculine feminine energy, that one is technically more emotional when we're talking about people. When we look at how cultures treat their young boys and men, there's this expectation of men to not be emotional, not to be needy, and yet the attachment styles are still there. So what can happen with an anxious attachment, especially for someone that it's stigmatized for, or if it was a strategy that was created, or just a natural evolution of that attachment, and that was rejected, then there can be something that's built over that, a strategy called counterdependence, which means the anxiety never goes away, but their ability to hide it gets to be really good. Because of the social stigmas that exist between men being emotional and perhaps women being non-emotional to some degree, that there can be a great deal of shame around these attachment styles. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with you because your attachment is the way it is. That's literally formed between the ages of like 0 and 2 and 0 and 4. It happens so young, and it's just what it is. It's something that happens, and there's no shame in being any kind of attachment style. I want to talk a little bit about masculine and feminine energy and how some of these attachment styles can like interact with the different types of energy. And it's very interesting. So regardless of gender, men, women, trans, we all embody masculine and feminine energy, or alpha, omega energy. So one is an initiating energy, very much based on action, structure, planning. And the other is a lot more emotional. It is motion, it's chaos, it is feeling, it's sensuality, it's creativity, spontaneity, play. It's all these very moving things, like the ocean. That body of water is like wild and deep and fun. You can surf on it, right? But of course, then there's also the container, the ocean basin, and that's more masculine energy. It's a holding, witnessing, supportive energy. I've heard it put this way once before, that masculine energy needs space and feminine energy needs time. And what's interesting about masculine energy, it's the pursuing energy, the initiating energy. And when the masculine partner stumbles across a feminine energy partner and she's more avoidant, avoidance can actually come across as secure attachment, because it's a person who's able to soothe without another person, and they can seem very confident, very calm, very secure within themselves, because we're not getting the whole picture just yet. That feminine energy partner, whether she's secure or whether she's avoidant, is able to actually give the masculine energy the space that's needed to pursue her, which makes her very attractive. But what can happen is when there's no skill set around understanding emotional intimacy, a masculine energy partner can pursue the feminine energy partner, and it's very fun and exciting, and it can feel very secure and stable and natural, only to find when the masculine energy partner actually tries to close the gap, he might find that he's unable to do so, because the more the masculine energy partner moves towards the feminine energy partner, the more she, and I'm just using it in general, will keep moving away. And that can become a point of frustration, or just realizing maybe she was not really secure to begin with. Another interesting thing that kind of goes on here when it comes to the cultural norms that I was talking about, where men aren't emotional. So if we have an anxiously attached man or masculine energy partner, if you've asked anyone who's transitioned, they understand how the cultural expectations change. Then the more anxious or needy this masculine energy partner is, the more it can be a turnoff. And it's almost due to this cultural avoidance around emotions when it comes to gender, which is very interesting. And I think it just adds another piece here, which can feel very confusing when we're trying to date or get into relationships. I also want to point out that it's stereotypical for women to be emotional. People are designed differently, and some people are more emotional, some people are less emotional, and it doesn't actually mean that they're not healthy. Now, that being said, there's still emotional intimacy, there's still emotion, and so a healthy person is going to be able to be vulnerable and connect and attach to another person. Due to emotional neglect, it seems as though most men are actually, or most masculine energy partners are entrained to be more avoidant or to not show any emotion, and thus they're not very comfortable dealing with emotions. And then women on the other side, or the feminine energy partners, can actually come across as more anxious, generally speaking, of course, but it's a whole other thing. Like, I believe people are actually disorganized. I don't really know that there's a true 100% category of anxious or avoidant. But women, their emotions are encouraged, And so they're more free to like reach out and ask for things and stuff like that. So I just think it's more likely that we would see anxious attachment in women. But again, that would just be based on cultural norms, and it would be a generality. So if you are either and you fit into any category, you are fine. I want to reiterate that, how normal it is for any person to have any kind of attachment style. How we attach is so different. It's based on personality. It's based on so many different factors. And so regardless of your attachment style, there's nothing wrong with you. You're completely normal. And I really want to drive that point home, because I know there can be a ton of shame around attachment styles, or feeling like there's something wrong with us or we're weird. And there's absolutely nothing wrong or weird with you just because you don't seem to fit into a specific box. It's also interesting to think about feminine energy partners and their attraction to the masculine energy partners, almost based on the stereotypical idea that masculine energy partners aren't going to be emotional. And perhaps also when they see an avoidant partner, potential mate, that there might be an attraction there just based off of these societal norms that I totally believe are founded in being a lot more avoidant and not emotional, and that's not necessarily a good thing. Here are some final takeaway points. No matter what your gender is or lack of gender, doesn't matter. Your sexual orientation does not matter. You can have any variation of attachment style, and it's completely normal. Based on our society and cultural norms and stigmas, there might be more shame associated with certain attachment styles for men or women. And that's also normal to feel that, just because it is a thing. And lastly, one of the most important things to know when healing through attachment style trauma is that attachment trauma is relational trauma. It's trauma that has happened in the presence of people or because of the absence of people. So proximity or distance, there has been trauma. And essentially what we're doing while healing any attachment style is learning to self-soothe so that we can encounter those triggers and learn how to navigate and understand what the deeper need is, so that we're able to feel safe in proximity or safe in distance when it comes to people. So we should feel good 95% of the time when we're around other people, and we should really feel good 95% of the time when we're by ourselves. The key here really is self-soothing. And there's a whole other topic that we can talk about, because sometimes people can take self-soothing to mean that they shouldn't have any needs or that they should try to take care of everything on their own. It's simply not the case. It's learning to navigate and manage your own triggers so that you're showing up into a partnership as a secure person available of reciprocity. And so really it's taking anything away or essentially healing any part of you that is inauthentic, that is sending alerts to you now from the past in the present to say that you're not safe. And we need to have a conscious conversation between our minds and our emotions so that we're able to show up in the present moment and be around other people. If you learned something here and you like the video, go ahead and like and comment. It really helps to get this to other people that it could help. And if you're on YouTube, you can also hit subscribe and get alerted when more of my videos come out. And that helps me to make more content for you. And if you ever have any questions, comments, leave them below or send me a direct message, because when you send me questions or different things that are going on, it helps me to make content for you. All right, have a great day.